What's going on, everybody? This is the blockchain backer, bringing you the latest cryptocurrency news and analysis. Happy Friday. It is the end of the week. We'll take a peek over here at the Bitcoin price chart and the altcoin market. We'll talk about some of the news going on in the crypto world. With it being the end of the week, we'll try to find some positive things going on here in the cryptocurrency market as the prices are still just kind of staying flat, right? So on Wednesday, we kind of had the bigger pull down. Thursday, I was off yesterday. The prices were popping up. I was out enjoying the weather yesterday. Posted that over here on my Twitter. But for the most part, throughout the whole cryptocurrency market, it was a green day. But as we could see today, we're kind of right back to where we were on Wednesday. So prices really haven't fluctuated a whole lot since the fall that we had back on Wednesday. You could see Bitcoin's just been ranging here just above $43,000. So as for the price action for Bitcoin, and kind of without rehashing the same things over and over again, on Wednesday, we were taking a look at the inverse price charts. We're taking a look over there at the moving averages. Bitcoin's still just kind of hanging out here in no man's land. So still not really kind of like to the halfway point of the upward sloping channel that it's been within, the parallel channel, and also above the moving averages. You do see that the 50 did cross above the 100 yesterday. So, hey, that's kind of cool. But otherwise, pretty lackluster price action in Bitcoin for the last couple of days. But I saw this really interesting poll run by Raul Paul over here on Twitter the other day. And I shared this over here on my Twitter last night. And I thought it was really interesting to just kind of get a sentiment gauge on what's going on with people in the cryptocurrency market, or really just in the equities market as well. I think, if one has a certain sentiment, that typically translates into the other. But he asked, hey, just a pulse check, will equities make lower lows this year? And we could see the three different answer options in here. Yes, lower, no, low is in, and not sure. And we could see that 55.7% of respondents said that yes, equities will make lower lows this year. Only 22.1% said no, the low is in. So about 2.5 to 3 times more people believe that new lows will get set in the equity market rather than new highs. And well, if you spend any time on Twitter over the course of the last month, right, we're talking about inverted yield curves, we're talking about the Fed raising interest rates, we're talking about stagflation, recession. The word recession is coming up nonstop over there on Twitter and everywhere. So it's pretty much getting pounded into everybody's heads that a recession is coming, right? We can even look over here at Google Trends to see that interest over time. This is really about the last 2 years, ever since after the C19 sell-off, after the chaos began back there in March of 2020, that, searching for recession had really kind of calmed down. But we could see here in March and April, big spikes here in Google searching for recession. And so we could see that the sentiment of the market now believes that we are going to go lower over there in equities. But of course, I step in and I say, well, while the vast majority believe equities will crash below the February lows, my bets are placed that the Dow Jones will set a new all-time high. So rather than just talking about Bitcoin meandering in here for quite some time, I figured we could talk more about the broader aspect of the market, because the reality is, for me personally, when I look at the cryptocurrency market, I believe there needs to be strength over there in the stock market in order for that to translate over into the cryptocurrency market, because throughout history, the cryptocurrency market has followed the stock market, and in particular, the Dow Jones Industrial Average. I've gone through this many times, and every time that the Dow goes into some type of pausing period, that's when Bitcoin goes into a bear market. You can see here is 2014 to 2016, where the Dow paused itself at. What do we have? We have the 2016-2017 bull run. Then for years, it goes flat and does nothing. Then finally, here in late 2020 and 2021, breaks out and goes to a new level. We get the bull run for crypto during this time as well. And as we could see ever since here, April, what has happened? Just a bunch of ranging happening here in the Dow Jones, right? But that doesn't just happen for these bull runs right in here. We go back throughout history all time. Every time there's a breakout, then a pause, the same thing happens in the cryptocurrency market. So while there may not be like a day-to-day correlation, everybody's looking saying, hey, if it has to be correlated, it's got to be correlated on a day-to-day price action. Not true. But for the broader aspect of it, whenever there's bigger breakouts in there, that tends to lead to the bigger bull runs. And as you guys know, we've been diving through this thing for quite a while, and I've been presenting the idea that this has been an ABC correction, waves of near equal length, with a 702 Fibonacci retracement happening here in the Dow Jones. And that, my thoughts are there's probably still more pulling back to happen here in the Dow Jones, but my thought process is a round out and off into new all-time highs, as I stated over here on Twitter last night. which of course, throughout history has proven to be positive for the cryptocurrency market. And I thought in this video too, we can kind of talk a little bit about some ideas I have over here for the Dow Jones Industrial Average and what's been going on in here. Many of you are very familiar with the double tap, bull flag, breakout, back test, V bottom. Talked about this many times on my YouTube channel. However, if you search around on Twitter, you look around out there in the world, recession, pretty much the world is saying, nope, we're going down. Now, I've overlaid what the great run up or, the roaring 20s looked like back in the 1920s. That one points to one more wave to the upside. We've even presented an idea here of potentially two more waves going to the upside, and that we're kind of wrapping up wave 2 in here. So you have wave 3 up and then wave 5 up. But again, I know a lot of people don't really care too much about the Dow. I know they care way more about cryptocurrency, but you have to understand from my thought process, it's that, hey, I'm a full believer that crypto follows the stock market. So seeing the stock market go up is kind of a key element. So let's talk about this. You have your double tap, bull flag, breakout, back test, V bottom. If you have never seen me talk about that on this YouTube channel, I don't know if I can really spend 5 to 10 minutes going into super detail with it, because there's a big aspect of the audience who has heard me talk about it way more than they would ever want to hear me talk about it ever again. But during the C19 sell-off, the chaos that we had in there, while the world was screaming that we were going into Great Depression during that time, my argument was that no, it's a V bottom and we're going to go off and set new all-time highs over here in the stock market, and that crypto will follow along. It was a very unpopular opinion. It was a great time to be a content creator and create gloom and doom videos and great reset and everything in the sky is going to fall and all that stuff. But then, of course, it breaks out into new all-time highs. And so at this point, now we've paused out. We've had kind of an ABC correction so far at this point. I figured let's kind of compare that. We can look at Bitcoin and see what Bitcoin's bubble structure looked like back in 2017, because there's no question the Dow Jones is going into a big, massive bubble, right? Let me take all of this stuff off the screen. That's a bubble. I mean, these things will end in Great Depressions. They always do. The big question here now is this the start of it? Is this where the peak is? Is this where it starts to fall apart and crumble down? If it does, well, we've never seen what can happen with Bitcoin in that circumstance, because where was Bitcoin created? Right here. Bitcoin was created in the depths of the great financial crisis. So in order to see, we just don't know, right? We don't have any reference point to know what happens if the entire stock market goes completely weak, completely limp, and collapses on itself. What happens to Bitcoin and what happens to the cryptocurrency market? But what we do know, like I pointed out earlier in this video, is every time there's these big pauses in here, this has led to bear markets for Bitcoin. So history of even just this big ride up, which is the only existence of Bitcoin in here, shows that every time the Dow pauses out, Bitcoin pauses out too. So if the Dow is going to start collapsing on itself, there's not really any good evidence out there to indicate that Bitcoin would thrive in that environment. But the question is that the top of the stock market, right? So is there potential for there to be more waves to the upside? And again, this is probably going to be a lot more for the people who have watched this and heard me talk about double tap, bull flag, breakout, back tests. But back in 2017, Bitcoin did the same structure as it was going off into its parabolic bubble, in which that Bitcoin had two kind of run-ups, as we had here in the Dow Jones, had its double tap, its breakout, V bottom back test, and then off and away it went, right? But as we could see, once it got through this area, what came into play here? An ABC correction did show up in here before it was able to move on and continue its parabolic rise. So you have your V bottom come out of here, it sets a new high, and then ABC, and that's what we have going on over here in the Dow Jones so far. Your double tap, bull flag, breakout, back test, V bottom, and up in here, we've got our ABC going on in here. And this is exactly what we have going on in bubble structures as well. And I'll try to take some of this off the screen so we're not so sloppy in here with everything, because I know it can add a lot of confusion when we see all these different things on here. So goodbye to all that work. But as we know, the C19 sell-off pulled back onto the bull flag with the double tap, bull flag, back test. Same thing that we had for Bitcoin in here. And then you see that you go up and you have to kind of work through your all-time high in here. Work through the previous high that was set back in here. Same thing that we have going on in here. We get our breakout, and finally we have an ABC correction arriving. And that's what we have here back in Bitcoin. And in this circumstance, it would indicate that, hey, this was wave 1 and 2 showing up in here for a much bigger ride up. If I was newly tuning into this channel, I'd be saying, Might sound like some hopium there, blockchain backer, but the reality is this has been my thought process. With it now being April of 2022, I've been presenting this since March of 2020. So get a lot of this off the screen again, and you take a look in here and see where you're at within this thing. Is that the bubble would still have quite a ways to go up, because we're looking at only being in somewhere like right here. Kind of see where this thing really pulled back to, right? It did not pull back to the highs that were set prior to the V bottom pulling down in here. Look, that's way down there for the Dow Jones. Same story in here. Still just ABCing at a higher price level, setting up for a further bubble ride up. In addition, one of the things that usually doesn't happen at tops is that retail investors all get the opportunity to be the ones to sell at the top. Typically, retail investors are going to believe that it's going to go significantly higher. We saw there that the majority of participants believe that the markets are going to crash and we're going to go into a recession. We see recession Google Trend search volume up really high. We know that the general public, the herd, tends to get it wrong. We saw that happen twice in Bitcoin. We saw the laser eyes and diamond hand stuff from back in the spring of last year. We saw the vast majority of people believing that Bitcoin was going to $100,000 back in November and December. Typically, the majority is going to be on the wrong side. So what we would be indicating here is if the stock market is going to actually crash from here, well, we can look at what has happened over the course of the last 40 years. The stock market is up almost 5,000%. And we look at where we're at right now. Essentially, where are we? We are about 6.5% off of the all-time high. And so essentially saying, hey, retail investors get the opportunity to sell at the literal top. They get the opportunity to get scared at the literal top, and they can sell out up here. That's just not how things typically go. Typically, retail investors are going to get shooken out. They got shooken out during C19, and they got shooken out during the Russia and Ukraine invasion. And just like back in 2020, when everything was going on, they didn't have faith in the rally. They did not believe the rally would go on to set new all-time highs. And we have that same sentiment happening again. So again, I know most people tune into this channel for cryptocurrency discussion, and we're talking a lot about the stock market in here. But from my macro thesis and from my underlying belief system, I have to at least present to you why I stay that way, right? It's one thing to just come on here and say, we're going to the moon for the sake of the fact that we're going to the moon. But for me personally, there has to be a macro belief that, markets in general are going to move up. And my presentations throughout the history of my channel have always been that, hey, stock market moves up, crypto moves up. So is there a macro perspective for stock market moving up? And I fully believe that there is, even though the majority believe that there isn't, with us only being 6% off the all-time highs. And again, you would have had to have been with this channel for the last 2 years to really understand the double tap, bull flag, breakout, backtest, V bottom, breakout into new all-time highs, the thing that we've discussed about so many times in here. And what do you see? An ABC correction comes out up in here. And so far, that's what we've had over here in the stock market and the Dow Jones Industrial Average. Also, we know that the Dow Jones has not reached out to a 4.236 extension. So am I like fully confident that we're going to have multiple waves that go up much higher? No, I'm not fully confident on that. If we compare this to what happened during the Roaring 20s, it's only one more wave up, but a euphoric wave of excitement with the things that we typically see. Just like we saw in Bitcoin, everybody buys the top, everybody YOLOs in, everybody thinks it can't go, it can't go down. So right now the narrative is out there that the Fed is going to actually destroy markets with higher interest rates and all this crazy stuff, quantitative tightening, right? But that narrative can change on a dime, right? Lose all faith in the Fed all over again, just like there was a year ago, right? A year ago, the belief was that the Fed wouldn't be able to do anything. They can't be trusted. They're never going to do anything. They're no good for their word. But right now, everybody's taking them for their word that things are going to get really rough out there with a ton of interest rate hikes, and that the Fed is going to take credit and accountability for crashing markets. Since when has the government, and we can argue whether or not the Fed is part of the government or not, but since when have they ever taken accountability and been the cause of crashes? No, there's always another external event that becomes the cause. So that way politicians, governments, none of them are ever responsible for the actual crash. But right now the narrative is that they're going to crash it, right? Does that make logical sense based on history? No, they never are the ones who crash it. And over the course of the last 6 months, we've seen all this stuff about Congress wanting to ban themselves from owning stocks, right? That hasn't passed. I mean, you think to yourself logically, at least I do. I say, all right, have these people been insider trading the whole way up? Of course they have. Are they going to let themselves get stuck holding the bags all the way down? Or are they just going to randomly start dumping all their bags for no reason whatsoever and make everybody in America super mad that Congress insider traded and front ran the crash? Of course not. I absolutely don't think that's going to happen. But I think this is their magical formula of what they're going to do, is that they're going to pass this trading ban that makes it so that they can't own any stocks. Not only them, but their family members, right? Their kids, their wives, their brothers, their sisters. Think about any job out there, right? I mean, can you reasonably say, hey, nobody in your family is allowed to do this, right? Imagine this, like, right, I go and I run for Congress, right? And I get elected, and then I have to call up my brother-in-law. I have to call up all these people and say, hey, by the way, you're not allowed to own any stocks anymore because of my new job. Does that make logical sense? No, it doesn't. But it feeds what people want to hear. They want to hear that Congress can't do any more insider trading. So it sells this really good narrative of like Congress is being the good guy now. They've got to dump all their stocks. They're not allowed to own anything. And ever since we've had this pullback, has that really been on the front run? Has that been a big major topic of discussion? No. But will they do it at all-time highs? You better believe it. I think they'll do it. If they inside traded the whole way up, they're definitely going to find a sneaky way to sell out of their bags without making people angry, but instead by making it seem like they're heroes and doing the right thing. So while the general public, the vast majority of the herd, do believe that the stock market is going to crash, I'm not in that camp. My macro thesis is that there still is actually new all-time highs to be set over here in the Dow Jones, which translates into positive price action for the cryptocurrency market based on history. But in the shorter term time frame, it does seem to me, like we've been discussing for weeks, looking for us to break out of here and get up to 35,000 for the Dow Jones, that a pullback into these price levels is the most likely based on what we've seen these structures do before. So getting back down into the lower 33s over here in the Dow before a round out comes out in here still seems the most likely to me. And as we've discussed with Bitcoin, we won't go too deep into it, still further likely downward action to go for Bitcoin in here before it can start rounding itself out again. And while the US dollar is showing some strength right now into the last retracement levels up in here, I still just don't think it will last. If you're unfamiliar with what happened with the Russian ruble during the invasion back in February, the Russian ruble tanked and it lost 50% of its value versus the US dollar. And we've seen all of that regained, and the ruble is now stronger versus the dollar than it was prior to the invasion. So I'm still not convinced of this rally over here in the dollar that it's going to keep going up. We've talked about retracements before and structures of these. It still looks just like a retracement to me. And for a country who's had a bunch of sanctions placed on it, it certainly seems like the times are turning. But I thought it was very interesting to show in here, if you're in the camp of thinking that this is going to crash and go into oblivion, that is what the majority believes. But I don't believe we're there just yet. And that's a good thing for crypto and a good thing for Congress, who want to sell all of their stocks. So I still think we're in a waiting game here on the short-term time frame for Bitcoin, but I wanted to show my macro perspective of markets, that I'm still optimistic for more price appreciation to happen over there in the Dow Jones. And I've always stuck with my view that I think that crypto and the stock market are tied together. And I'm optimistic for the stock market. So of course, I'm optimistic for the crypto market as well. I think we're kind of just going to have to deal with a little bit of impatience sitting in here while we're kind of grinding this out, and for the altcoin market to really kind of start getting its bid to go. But I'm way more optimistic on the altcoin market than I am on Bitcoin. You guys know that. Bitcoin's already gone into big, massive rise. It's already risen 2,000% in this bull run. Ethereum has risen 5,000% during this bull run. Both of those things have already had major price appreciations and done the vast majority of their bull runs, if not the whole things already. But I'm super optimistic for the remainder of the altcoin market, in particular those things that haven't had those big runs just yet. Now, if you've been hanging out over there on Twitter, and I'm sure YouTubers are covering this out there, is that the Bitcoin 2022 Miami conference has been going on. There hasn't been anything like really groundbreaking coming out of this just yet. I kind of giggled at this tweet that was posted by Ben Armstrong, Michael Saylor, never sell your Bitcoin, crowd goes wild. Jack Mallers, here's a great way to spend your Bitcoin, crowd goes wild. Like, does no one see the disconnect here? So essentially, the speakers were, there's been lots of different speakers, and of course, lots of different price predictions. I think Kathy Wood said $1 million. I think so did Mike Novogratz. I think that's what you would expect to hear at a Bitcoin conference, that you're going to $1 million. That, of course, is not my long-term belief. But, we're on day 3 of this, I believe. It will go through to tomorrow. I know last year it was the last day when they announced the El Salvador making Bitcoin a legal currency in their country. So, and that was at the very end. So I'm sure the bigger news announcements that they have saved for this thing will come out either later today or tomorrow. And we'll see if anything kind of groundbreaking comes out of this. But so far, nothing that significant. I know people will argue with me differently on that, but we'll see what comes. And so as we head into the weekend, I'm going to go into it with the mindset that, hey, it's probably just going to stay around in here. It looks like Bitcoin's starting to catch a little bit of a bid here as I'm wrapping up this video. But if anything crazy happens, I'll check in with you guys throughout the weekend. I'm going to be in town. I don't have anything crazy going on this weekend. So if anything amazing happens, or not so amazing, I'll try to check in with you guys throughout the weekend. Otherwise, I'm going into it with the expectations of still just ranging. But hey, if something else ends up happening, I'll check in with you throughout the weekend. Otherwise, I hope that you guys have a fantastic weekend. Yesterday was the start of Major League Baseball. That's my favorite sport, baseball. It was really the perfect day to get outside and enjoy the weather, and then at the same time watch baseball for the rest of the day. So it's always a long wait between seasons for me. But I'm happy it's back, and that's what I'll be doing throughout most of the weekend. Or if we get some crazy price action, I'll check in with you guys. But I hope that you have a wonderful weekend. I want to thank you so much for watching my channel. If you're looking for something to do throughout the weekend, you can check out my website over here, which is bcbacker.com. And like I always say, this is a course that I put together where I deep dive into the previous Bitcoin bull runs and the previous altcoin market cycles, tying them all together to show how the cryptocurrency market has worked in the past. I talk about my personal exit plans in here, and I teach you how to set up your own charts and your own indicators within TradingView and CoinTrader Pro. The most recent market update is in there on March 31st. So last week, you could check out all of this educational content over here on bcbacker.com. You can follow me over here on Twitter at bcbacker. I want to thank you guys so much for watching my channel. I hope that you have a wonderful weekend. If you could, please like this video and give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you could be notified of when I create new content and when I go live. As always, this is not investment advice, and I am not a financial advisor. But if you ever need a pick-me-up or a little bit of reassurance, just remember that the blockchain backers got your back. Have a good one.